The gavel struck the obsidian table. The echo took 3 seconds to die. High Commander Dravik Vex stood, his scaled hands flat on the stone, and looked down at the 5 humans seated among the unclassified species. "You asked for a demonstration," he said. His voice carried no question. The vote had been 387 to 12. The 12 had read the document. The council chamber was a sphere of pale stone, 400 meters across, with tiers of seats climbing every wall. The air smelled of cool crystal from the rings of Vithara, a mineral tang that settled in the back of the throat. Elder Thessari sat in the topmost row, her 4th finger tapping against her thigh. She had been tapping that rhythm for 300 years, waiting for something to break. From her perch, she could see the whole assembly. 2,341 delegates from 887 species, arranged by seniority. The Drakari sat near the center, their bronze-scaled faces impassive. The Tharani, her own people, were 3 rows below, but she had not spoken to them in decades. She watched. That was her purpose. Below, Vex gestured with a 4-fingered hand toward the human delegation. 3 centuries of membership, he said, and they request a technology demonstration. His heat-sensing pits along his jaw flared, a sign of amusement. A ripple of laughter moved through the chamber. Someone near the front chuckled openly. Thessari did not laugh. She watched the humans. There were 5 of them, simple dark uniforms, no insignia except a small patch on the shoulder, a blue circle with a white line through it. They sat in the section for unclassified species, the lowest tier, where the air was colder and the sound-dampening crystal did not reach. The central figure, a man in a worn leather coat, sat with his hands resting on his knees. His temples were gray. His face did not move. He held a small ceramic cup in his right hand, steam rising from it, but he never drank. Thessari's tapping finger stopped. She had seen many species come to the council. She had watched them plead, threaten, bargain, weep. She had never seen one sit like that, not afraid. "Not angry, not waiting for permission," Vex continued. "The proposal is dismissed. The humans will return to their assigned territory. They will not demonstrate. They will not test. They will not." The man in the worn coat set the cup down on the table in front of him. The clink of ceramic on stone cut through the laughter. It was not loud, but it was precise. Vex's ridged brow lowered. "You have something to say, Admiral." The man's name was Soren Wren. Thessari knew that, from the records, the ones she had read in the quiet hours of the last century. 34 years in the Earth Defense Fleet. 12 ships commanded. 2 lost. His hands, she noticed, were scarred. Old burns from a fuel line rupture in his 20s. He did not look at Vex. He looked at the center of the chamber, where the vote had been recorded. "I have nothing to say," Wren said. His voice was quiet. "The demonstration is scheduled. We will show what we have built. That is all." Vex's scales darkened. "You will show nothing. The council has ruled. Your proposal is rejected." Wren picked up the cup again. He turned it slightly, and Thessari saw the crack, a thin silver line against pale gray. She could not read the letters on it from that distance, but she saw them. Faded, blocky human script. He set it down again. "I know," he said. Thessari leaned forward. That was not fear in his voice. That was something else. Certainty, perhaps, or patience. The laughter faded. The chamber settled back into its ceremonial quiet. The vote was recorded. The document was filed. The humans remained seated. 3 hours later, in a maintenance bay on the Meridian Anchor, technician Dorian Hale poured himself a cup of instant coffee. He used the chipped mug that had belonged to his father. The crack caught the fluorescent light, a thin silver line against gray. His father had helped build the original stillness protocol. His father had died 4 years ago, never knowing if it would ever be used. Dorian drank the coffee. It was cold, like always, and ran his thumb along the crack. The letters on the side read "Day" in faded blue. He had kept the mug in his locker for 7 years, moving it from station to station, never leaving it behind. "Some things you kept because they were the only proof that someone had been there." He set the mug down on the console and pulled up the inventory log. 137 manifests, 4,000 components, all labeled standard maintenance parts, all cleared by council customs without a second glance. He had overseen the supply chain for 19 years, ever since his father's hands had grown too unsteady to hold a datapad. He knew every buoy, every relay, every node. He knew where they were hidden in dust clouds and asteroid fields in the communication relays that the Council used every day. He keyed a command. The screen displayed a map of Sector 9 Delta. 12,000 sensor buoys, 4,000 communication relays, 1,200 deployment nodes, all dormant, all waiting. Still cold, he murmured. Then he looked at the mug. Won't be cold for long. Thessery left the council chamber when the formal session ended. She walked through the obsidian corridors, past the archives and the meditation alcoves, until she reached her quarters, a small room with a single window that looked out onto the empty black. She sat on the edge of her cot and tapped her finger against her thigh. The rhythm was off. She had been waiting for 312 years, ever since the humans first arrived at the council's gate. She had watched them be dismissed, patronized, ignored. She had watched them send delegations, file proposals, ask politely for permission to exist. She had watched them never raise their voices, and now they sat in the lowest tier of the chamber, with a chipped cup and a worn coat, and they did not react. She pulled up her personal archives. The human file was thick, hundreds of pages, thousands of observations. She had compiled them herself, over the decades. She scrolled to the section on military doctrine. One line caught her eye, written by a human historian she had never met. The loudest civilizations measure power in noise. The quiet ones measure it in how long they can wait. She read it 3 times, then she closed the file and tapped her finger again. The rhythm was slower now. 47 hours before the scheduled demonstration, Vex ordered his fleet to move. 12 capital ships, 40 support vessels, 300,000 troops. They took position in the outer reaches of the Meridian system, just beyond sensor range of the Council station. The order was logged as a security maneuver. No one questioned it. On the bridge of the Endurance, Captain Reyes watched the Drakari fleet appear on his tactical display. He was a small man, narrow-shouldered, with a face that had not smiled in a long time. He had been overseeing the Stillness Protocol's deployment for 19 years, moving components, falsifying manifests, bribing no one, because no one ever asked. The Council's customs officers waved every shipment through because they did not care. Reyes keyed the internal comm. "Dorian, they're here. All 12 of them." Dorian's voice came back, tinny through the speaker. "I see them. Protocol is still cold. We wait." Reyes looked at the display. The Drakari ships were massive, each one bristling with weapons, each one a monument to the Council's power. His own ship was 300 meters of unremarkable metal, unarmored, unarmed. He had flown it for 12 years. He had never fired a shot. "The Admiral is still in the chamber," Reyes said. "I know," Dorian said. "He's buying time." Reyes leaned back in his chair. The chair creaked. He had not replaced it because it reminded him of his first posting, back when he was a lieutenant and believed that the Council would eventually listen. He had stopped believing that 5 years ago, after the report on the 4,000 civilians. He pulled up the file. The report was classified collateral damage, but he had seen the raw data, the images, the names. He had memorized one of them, a child, age 7, who had been caught in a stabilization operation on a colony that had refused to accept Council law. The child's name was Lynn. The report did not mention Lynn. The report mentioned 0 civilian casualties. Reyes closed the file. He looked at the Drakari fleet. Then he looked at the countdown on his console. 47 hours. He had waited 19 years. He could wait 47 more. Thessery heard the rumor before it was confirmed. A junior aide, one of her own species, came to her quarters with a pale expression. "Elder, the Drakari have mobilized. They intend to intercept the human ship before the demonstration." Thessery did not react. "Who told you this?" The aide hesitated. "Everyone knows. Vex broadcast the order. He wants the humans to see the fleet and cancel." "Will they?" The aide blinked. "Cancel? The humans? They have 5 ships in the entire system. One of them is the Endurance, and it has no weapons." Thessery stood. She walked to the window and looked out at the black. "They will not cancel," she said. "You do not understand them." She turned. Her 4th finger tapped once, twice, 3 times against her thigh. The rhythm was steady now. "What is the current time?" The aide checked her data pad. 46 hours and 11 minutes until the demonstration." "Good," Thessery said. "I need to see the human delegation." She walked through the lower corridors, past the sections reserved for unclassified species. The air grew colder, the stone rougher. She found the human quarters a single narrow room with 5 chairs and a table. They were not sleeping. They were sitting in the same position she had seen in the chamber. Ren was in the center, the cup in his hand. The other 4 Voss, Chen, a young woman with short hair, and an older man with a datapad were arranged around him. Thessery stopped at the doorway. "Admiral," Ren looked up. His face did not change. "Elder?" She stepped inside. "The Drakari fleet is moving. You have 46 hours to cancel." "We know," Ren said. "You do not have weapons. You do not have support. The Council will not protect you." Ren set the cup down. The crack faced her now, the letters "Dad" visible. "We know that too," Thessary's tapping finger stilled. "Then why are you still here?" Ren looked at her. For the first time she saw something in his eyes, not fear, not anger, a deep, quiet stillness. "Like the surface of a frozen lake. Because we have been watching for 300 years, he said, "and we know exactly what they have done." He turned to the young woman, Chen, the one who had memorized the activation sequence. "What is the status of the stillness protocol?" Chen did not look up from her datapad. "All nodes report dormant. Relay network is stable. The Drakari are in range of 89% of the sensor buoys." "Good," Ren said. Then he looked back at Thessary. "You asked why we are still here. We are here because we are not asking for permission. We are here to show them something." Thessary's breath caught. "Show them what?" Ren picked up the cup. He turned it so the crack caught the light. "The truth," he said. "The one they've been hiding for 9,000 years." He took a sip of the cold tea, the first sip she had seen him take. Then he set the cup down and said, "You should go back to your seat, Elder. You will want to see this." Thessary did not move for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back through the cold corridors, her finger tapping a new rhythm. Faster now. She returned to the topmost row of the council chamber. The tiers were nearly empty. Most delegates had left, believing the session was over. But a few remained. The archivists, the junior aides, the species too insignificant to have quarters of their own, and the 5 humans in the lowest tier. Thessary sat down. She looked at the clock on the chamber wall. 45 hours and 52 minutes until the demonstration. She waited. The lights in the chamber flickered. A small thing, a maintenance glitch perhaps, but Thessary noticed it. She noticed that the humans did not react. She noticed that Vex had not returned to his seat. She noticed that the Drakari ships had not moved closer. She noticed that the human admiral was no longer holding the cup. It sat on the table, the crack facing upward, the letters "Dad" catching the dim light. And she noticed for the first time in 312 years that she was not waiting for something to break, she was waiting for something to begin. The council chamber had not been this full in decades. Delegates returned to their seats, summoned by whispered alerts. Their faces a mix of confusion and irritation. Thessary watched them file in, hundreds of species, thousands of eyes, all looking down at the 5 humans who had not moved. Ren sat with his hands on his knees, the cup still on the table. Chen's datapad glowed softly. Voss had his arms crossed. The older man, whose name Thessary had not learned, stared at the ceiling. Vex entered through the main archway, his ceremonial plate catching the crystal light. 11 system sigils gleamed on his chest. His heat-sensing pits were wide, flushed with something that might have been anger or might have been anticipation. He walked to the center of the chamber and turned to face the human delegation. "The demonstration is cancelled," he said. "No preamble. No courtesy. By order of the Council Security Directorate, all human vessels in this system are to stand down immediately. Your technicians will be placed under Council supervision. Your equipment will be impounded." A murmur ran through the tiers. Thessary's finger tapped once, twice. She watched Ren's face. It did not change. Vex stepped closer. "You have 1 hour to comply. After that, my fleet will board the Endurance and secure it by force." Ren looked up at Vex. He did not stand. He did not raise his voice. "You're welcome to try," he said. The chamber went silent. Not the ceremonial silence, not the respectful pause. The silence of people who had just heard something that did not fit. Thessary leaned forward. She had watched the council for centuries. She had never heard a delegate from an unclassified species speak to a high commander that way. Vex's scales darkened to a deep bronze. "You are threatening my fleet." "No," Ren said. "I'm stating a fact. The Endurance is a civilian vessel. It has no weapons, but it has a crew that has been waiting for this moment for 300 years, and they are not afraid of you." The murmurs grew louder. Thessary saw delegates leaning toward each other, datapads exchanging information. A few of the Drakari aides had gone still, their jaw pits pulsing. Vex raised a four-fingered hand. "Then I will make it simple," he said. "You have 59 minutes." He turned and walked back to his seat. The chamber settled into a low hum of speculation. Thessery watched the humans. Ren was no longer looking at Vex. He was looking at Chen. Chen nodded once. A tiny movement. Then she keyed something on her data pad. Thessery's finger stopped tapping. Dorian Hale was in the maintenance bay when the alert came through. A single line of text on his display. "Vex has moved. 59 minutes. He read it twice. Then he keyed the comm. "Raise." "You seeing this?" Ray's voice crackled back. "I see it. Protocol is still cold. They haven't activated the override yet. They will," Dorian said. "They always do. 9,000 years of the same pattern." He picked up the mug. The crack caught the light, a thin silver line against gray. He set it down on the console next to the activation key. His father had built the first node. His father had died never knowing if it would ever be used. Dorian had spent years finishing what his father started. He had moved thousands of components, falsified hundreds of manifests, watched the Council's customs officers wave every shipment through because they did not care enough to ask. He keyed a secondary display. A map of the Meridian system appeared. Thousands of buoys, hundreds of nodes, a web of observation that spanned 3 centuries of quiet work. He zoomed in on the Drakari fleet. The sensor readouts showed their positions, their weapon configurations, their shield harmonics, everything the Council thought was secret. "They have no idea," Dorian murmured. "They're sitting in the middle of it." He keyed the comm again. "Raise. Status of the Endurance. Stationary? We're not moving. The Admiral told us to wait." "Good. Tell me when the countdown hits 45 minutes. Thessery left her seat. She descended the tiers slowly, her hand brushing the pale stone wall. The sound-dampening crystal made her footsteps silent, one of the Council's ironies that the highest court in the galaxy was also the quietest. She reached the lowest tier, where the air was colder and the lighting was dimmer. The humans did not look at her. She stopped beside Ren. "Admiral," he looked up. "Elder, Vex is not bluffing. He has 12 capital ships. He will board the Endurance if you do not comply." "We know," Ren said. "He's been doing this for a long time. He thinks we are weak. Are you?" Ren did not answer immediately. He picked up the cup and turned it in his hands. "Elder, you have been watching us for a long time. What do you see?" Thessery considered the question. She looked at the 5 humans, at their worn uniforms and their calm faces. She looked at the chip in the cup and the faded letters. She thought about everything she had read in her archives, everything she had observed. "I see people who are not afraid," she said. "That is unusual." Ren nodded. "It is. But it is also because we have been preparing. For 300 years, we have been collecting information. Every council session, every treaty, every operation that you classified as collateral damage, we know where the bodies are buried." Thessery's breath caught. "How?" Ren set the cup down. "We are quiet, we are patient, and we have been watching the Watchers." He turned to Voss. "Show her." Voss unfolded his arms and pulled a small projector from his pocket. He set it on the table, and a hologram bloomed in the air, a 3-dimensional map of the Obsidian Citadel. Thessery recognized the chamber, the archives, the maintenance corridors. But there were markers on the map, hundreds of them, small blinking points. "These are your sensor buoys?" she asked. "No," Voss said. "These are ours. We seeded them over the last 2 centuries. They are in the walls, in the ceilings, in the communication relays that the Council uses every day. We have been recording everything." Thessery stared at the hologram. She counted the blinking points, dozens, maybe hundreds, in her own quarters, in the archives, in the Council chamber itself. "This is why Vex is afraid," Ren said. "He doesn't know what we have. He thinks it's a weapon. It's not. It's a record, a complete record of everything the Council has done for the last 3 centuries. The hologram shifted. A list appeared, names, dates, locations. Thessery recognized some of them. The 17 species that had been lost. The 4,000 civilian casualties. The 2 species quietly exterminated. Someone would have noticed, she said. Her voice was faint. "They did," Ren said. "They just didn't speak up." "The Council's rules are a shield for its sins. Exposure is the only weapon it cannot defend against." Thessery's finger tapped against her thigh, fast, uneven. She looked at the list again. She had been in the Council chamber when some of these decisions were made. She had watched the delegates vote, record the minutes, file the reports. She had never questioned them. She had been too patient. "We are giving you a choice, Elder," Ren said. "You can stay in your seat and watch the demonstration, or you can leave now and pretend you did not see this. But when the protocol activates, everyone will see it. Everyone. There will be no place to hide." Thessery looked at the hologram, then she looked at Ren. "What happens to you if you do this?" Ren smiled. It was a small thing, barely a movement of his mouth. "We are already the dismissed species. We have been dismissed for 300 years. We have nothing to lose but the truth we have been carrying." Thessery did not answer. She turned and walked back to her seat, her finger tapping a rhythm she had not used in centuries. When she sat down, she was still tapping. The clock on the chamber wall showed 42 minutes remaining. Reyes watched the Drakari fleet on his tactical display. They had not moved closer, but they had adjusted their positions, a subtle shift that put more weapons facing the Endurance. He checked the countdown. 41 minutes. "Raise!" Dorian's voice came through the comm. "The Admiral just sent a message. We are authorized to begin the pre-activation sequence." Reese straightened. Now. The Council is watching. Vex is watching. We need to show them something before they panic." Reyes keyed the command. A soft hum filled the bridge, the sound of the stillness protocol warming up. It was not a weapon. It had never been a weapon. It was a system, a network, a mirror. 3 centuries of observation compressed into a single moment of truth. Status? Dorian's voice was steady. "All nodes coming online. Boys 1 through 1200 reporting clean. Relay network at 100%. "Good," Reyes said. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the display. The Drakari ships were still there, massive and silent. Now we wait, Dorian echoed. 40 minutes? 39. 38. Thessery saw the change before anyone else did. The humans in the lowest tier were moving, small adjustments, a datapad passed from Chen to Voss. Ren standing for the first time in hours. He walked to the center of the chamber and faced the empty podium where the council president usually sat. "Your attention," he said, quietly, but the sound-dampening crystal did not dampen it. The chamber went still. Vex rose from his seat. "You are not authorized to address." "I am not asking for authorization," Ren said. "I am telling you what is about to happen." He turned to face the tiers. "For the last 300 years, we have been members of this council. For the last 300 years, we have been dismissed, ignored, and patronized. For the last 300 years, we have watched you do this to other species, the ones you lost, the ones you did not investigate, the ones you quietly erased." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Vex stepped forward. "This is a violation of council procedure." "The council procedure," Ren said, "is the problem. You have rules for everything except accountability. You have protocols for everything except truth. You have been hiding behind your institutions for 9,000 years. And today, we are going to show you what that looks like." He raised his hand. On the chamber's central display, an image appeared. A map, the Meridian system, thousands of blinking points. Vex's scales paled. "What is this?" "This," Ren said, "is what we have been building. A network of sensor buoys, communication relays, and deployment nodes. They are in the walls of this chamber. They are in the dust clouds your ships fly through. They are in the asteroid fields your mining operations harvest. They have been recording everything for 3 centuries. The display shifted. A list appeared. Names, dates, locations, the 17 species, the 4,000 civilians, the 2 exterminated species. "These are the operations you classified as collateral damage," Ren said. "These are the ones you did not investigate. These are the ones you hoped no one would remember." The silence in the chamber was absolute. Thessery could hear her own heartbeat. She looked at the Drakari delegation. They had gone still. Vex's hands were gripping the edge of his seat. "This is not a weapon," Ren said. "It is a mirror. It shows you exactly who you have been." He turned to Chen. "Activate the stillness protocol." Chen's fingers moved across her datapad. The central display flickered. And then the council saw itself. Every treaty, every secret annexation, every operation that had been classified, every casualty count that had been altered, every species that had been lost and never found. The records were complete, time-stamped, verified. The council's archives had been mirrored, copied, and cross-referenced. There was no room for denial. Vex's voice was a rasp. "This is impossible." "It is possible," Ren said. We have been doing it for 300 years. You told us we were primitives. You told us we were untested. You told us we were beneath notice. We listened, we waited, and we prepared. The display scrolled through the evidence. Thessery watched the faces around her, delegates who had voted for these operations, aides who had filed the paperwork, archivists who had buried the truth. Some of them looked away. Some of them stared at the display, their mouths open. None of them spoke. Vex stood. His hands were shaking. You have no right, we have every right, Ren said. We have been watching you for 300 years. We have seen you do this to 41 species before us. We waited because we wanted to believe you would stop. You did not. He walked back to his seat. He sat down. He picked up the cup and took a sip of cold tea. The chamber stayed silent. Thessary's fingers stopped tapping. She looked at the display. She looked at the Drakari delegation, at Vex's shattered expression. She looked at the humans, who were not celebrating, not gloating, not doing anything except sitting and waiting. She understood. Then, the humans had not won through power. They had won through patience. They had outweighted a 9,000-year-old institution. And now the council was looking at itself. The countdown was still running. 32 minutes. She watched it tick down. She watched the Drakari fleet freeze in place, their commanders too stunned to give orders. She watched Vex retreat to the back of the chamber, his ceremonial plate catching the light of the display. She watched the humans sit in their cheap uniforms, with their worn coat and their chipped cup, and wait. The truth was not a weapon. It was something older. Something the council had forgotten how to recognize. Thessery sat in her seat. She was centuries old. She had watched the council make the same mistakes for 9,000 years, and now for the first time she was watching them realize it. She started tapping again. A slow rhythm. She could wait. She had been waiting for centuries. She could wait a little longer. The display did not stop. The records scrolled. The evidence accumulated. The chamber did not speak. 30 minutes remained, and Vex's fleet had not moved an inch. The Drakari fleet broke formation. 3 ships turned away, then 5, then 8. Vex watched from the chamber floor, his scales a mottled copper, his hands gripping the edge of his seat. Recall them, he growled at his aides. Recall them now. No one moved. Thessery counted the votes as they climbed. 312 in favor, 204 against, 171 abstaining. The numbers kept shifting. Delegates who had voted against humanity 3 centuries ago were changing their ballots. Some were weeping. Others were silent. Kaylin stood at the center of the chamber, her voice steady. The record will stand. The truth will not be hidden. That is what we are voting for. Vex rose from his seat. He walked to the lowest tier, his ceremonial plate catching the dim light. His heat-sensing pits were wide, flushed with something that was no longer anger. It was fear. You do not understand what you're doing, he said. The council is not a structure. It is a habit. You cannot break a habit with a vote. You cannot change 9,000 years of silence with a single demonstration. Ren looked up. His face was calm. We are not trying to break the habit. We are trying to show you what it looks like. The rest is up to you. Vex's hand went to his blade. He drew it, a curved length of dark metal etched with Drakari runes. The chamber gasped. Thessery leaned forward, her finger pressing hard against her thigh. Put that away, High Commander. The voice came from the upper tiers. A young Drakari aide, his scales a pale bronze, his hands trembling. He had been standing at the back of the Drakari section, unnoticed until now. He stepped forward. I have seen the evidence. I have read the reports. I have been an aide for 17 years. I have watched you file the paperwork for operations we both knew were crimes. I will not be silent any longer. Vex turned. His blade was still drawn. Traitor, call me what you like. I am not the one who exterminated 2 species and called it administrative closure. The young aide walked to the center of the chamber. I second the vote. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted. Datapads flew. Aides scrambled. Thessery saw Vex's blade lower, saw his scales pale to a sickly gray. He was not used to being challenged. He was not used to losing. Ren stood. He walked to the display where the countdown was still ticking. 5 minutes. 4, this is not about us, he said. It is about you. You asked for a demonstration. We gave you one, but it was not about us. It was about you. Thessery watched the tally climb, 387 in favor, exactly the same number who had voted against humanity 3 centuries ago. The 12 who had read the document, they had been right all along. Vex dropped his blade. It clattered on the stone floor. He did not pick it up. 3 minutes. Reyes watched the countdown from the bridge of the Endurance. The Drakari fleet had fractured. Some ships were turning away, their weapon systems powering down. Others remained frozen, their commanders unsure. He keyed the comm. Dorian, status of the nodes, all 12,000 reporting. The broadcast is reaching every species. The vote is happening now. Reyes leaned back in his chair. He had waited 19 years for this moment. He had lost friends, lost opportunities, lost years. But he had also gained something: patience. The kind of patience that only comes from knowing the truth will eventually surface. He looked at the countdown. 2 minutes. We wait, he said. We have been waiting for 300 years. We can wait 2 more minutes. On the Meridian anchor, Dorian Hale set down the mug. The crack faced him. The letters D-A caught the light. His father had built the first node. His father had died 4 years ago, never knowing if it would ever be used. Dorian had finished the work. He had moved thousands of components, falsified hundreds of manifests, watched the Council's customs officers wave every shipment through. He picked up the mug. He held it for a moment, then he set it back down. Dad, he said, it's done. 1 minute. Thessary counted the seconds. The chamber was silent now, not the silence of ceremony, but the silence of people who had finally seen themselves. She looked at Ren. He was holding the cup, the crack facing the display, the letters catching the light. Your father, she said. He would be proud. Ren looked at her. For the first time, she saw something in his eyes that was not stillness. It was grief. Quiet, patient grief, the kind that had been waiting for this moment as long as the protocol had. I hope so, he said. I hope he is watching. The countdown hit 0. The display shifted. The evidence faded. A single line appeared. The council has voted. The regord will stand. The truth will not be hidden. Thessary sat down. She was centuries old. She had watched the council make the same mistakes for 9,000 years. She had watched the humans wait for 300 years. She had watched them win. Vex stood alone at the center of the chamber. His blade was on the floor. His officers had turned away. His fleet had fractured. His certainty was shattered. He did not speak. He walked to the exit, his scales pale, his steps slow. No one stopped him. No one followed. Thessary looked at the humans. They were not celebrating. They were not gloating. They were sitting in their cheap uniforms, with their worn coat and their chipped cup and waiting. She understood. Finally, the humans had not won through power. They had won through patience. They had outwaited a 9,000-year-old institution. Ren set the cup down. He looked at the display, then he said, "It is done." The chamber did not erupt, it exhaled. Delegates sat frozen, their datapads clutched, their eyes fixed on the display. The single line still glowed. The council has voted. The regord will stand. The truth will not be hidden. Thessary watched the words pulse, slow and steady, like a heartbeat she had not known was missing. Some delegates began to leave. They rose quietly, gathering their robes, their ceremonial symbols, their dignity. They did not speak to one another. They did not look back. Thessary counted them, dozens, then hundreds, filing out through the obsidian archways. The Drakari section emptied first. The bronze-scaled officers followed Vex's path, their faces unreadable, their steps measured. Vex himself was gone. He had walked out alone, his blade left on the stone floor. A young aide, not the one who had spoken, picked it up and carried it after him. No one stopped them. Thessary descended the tiers. Her feet made no sound on the crystal-dampened stone. She reached the lowest row, where the 5 humans sat in their cheap uniforms. Ren had not moved. The cup was still on the table, the crack facing up, the letters Dade catching the dim light from the display. She stopped beside him. Admiral. He looked up. His face was still calm, but she saw the grief beneath it. The same quiet grief she had glimpsed before. Elder, it is done, she said. It was not a question. It is done, he agreed. He reached for the cup, turned it in his hands. My father used to say that the hardest part of building something was not the building. It was the waiting to see if it would ever matter. And now it matters. Ren nodded. He set the cup down. Now it matters. Thessary looked at the other humans. Chen was closing her datapad, her fingers moving with the precision of someone who had memorized every step. Voss had his arms crossed, staring at the empty podium. The older man was still looking at the ceiling, his lips moving soundlessly. The young woman with short hair was checking a small device on her wrist. "What happens now?" Thessery asked. Ren stood. He adjusted his coat, a small, ordinary motion, the kind of thing a man did before leaving a room. "Now we go home. We have done what we came to do. The rest is up to you." He picked up the cup. He looked at it for a moment, at the faded letters, at the crack that had been there for longer than he had been alive. Then he held it out to Thessery. "Take it," she blinked. "I cannot. It is not a gift," he said. "It is a reminder. We have been watching you for 300 years. We will keep watching, but we will not always be here. This cup belonged to my father. He built the first node. He died without seeing this moment, but he knew it would come. He believed it would come." He pressed the cup into her hands. It was warm from his grip. The crack was thin, almost invisible. The letters were faded, but she could read them. "You were the only one who came to us," he said. "You were the only one who asked why we were not afraid. You saw us when no one else did. That matters." Thessery held the cup. She looked at Ren. "What do you want me to do with it?" "Keep it," he said. "Or leave it here. Whatever reminds you that silence is not neutrality. It is a choice." He turned to his team. "We are done. Let's go." Chen stood. Voss uncrossed his arms. The older man finally looked down from the ceiling. The 5 humans walked toward the archway, their footsteps echoing in the emptying chamber. Thessery watched them go. They did not look back. She stood alone in the lowest tier, the cup in her hands. The display still glowed. The chamber was nearly empty now. Only a few aides, a handful of archivists, and Kalen, who had remained in her seat. Thessery walked to the center of the chamber. She set the cup down on the podium where the council president usually stood. She turned it so the crack faced the empty tiers. The letters caught the light. She looked up at the display. The line had not changed. She thought about the 12 who had read the document, the ones who had voted against the council 3 centuries ago. They had been right. They had seen it coming, and now everyone else had seen it too. She thought about Vex walking through the obsidian corridors, his certainty shattered. She thought about the young Drakari aide who had spoken, the one who had broken the silence. She thought about the fleet that had fractured, the ships that had turned away. She thought about the humans walking back to their ship, to their unremarkable metal vessel, to the years of waiting that had finally ended. Thessery did not know what the council would become. She did not know if the truth would change anything. She did not know if 9,000 years of habit could be broken by a single demonstration. But she knew one thing. She sat down in the empty chamber. She looked at the cup. She thought about the father who had built the first node, the son who had finished the work, the species that had waited 3 centuries to show the council who they really were. She thought about the line Ren had not spoken, the line she knew was coming. She waited. The chamber was silent, not the silence of ceremony, not the silence of fear, the silence of people who had finally seen themselves. Thessery looked at the cup. The letters were faded, but she could read them. DAD. She thought about the man who had written them, the man who had never known if his work would ever be used. She thought about the son who had carried the cup across the galaxy, who had finished what his father started. She thought about the moment she had first seen Ren, sitting in the lowest tier, not afraid, not angry, just waiting. She understood now. The humans had not won through power. They had not won through technology. They had won through patience. They had outwaited a 9,000-year-old institution, and now the council was looking at itself. She stood. She walked to the podium. She picked up the cup. She turned it so the crack faced the empty tiers. The letters caught the light. Then she set it down again. She walked to the exit. She did not look back, but she heard the words in her mind. The words Ren had not spoken, but she knew them anyway, because you never saw it coming. That was the whole point. Thessery walked through the obsidian corridors. The air was cold. The crystal was silent. She passed the archives, the meditation alcoves, the chambers where the council had made its decisions for 9,000 years. She reached her quarters. She opened the door. She sat on the edge of her cot and looked out the window at the empty black. Her finger tapped once against her thigh, then she stopped. She did not need to wait any longer.